This whole ordeal, the one I'm about to tell you, it actually happened. Every agonizing detail, every gut-wrenching moment, is etched into my memory like it was yesterday. It started with a phone call, a frantic, tear-choked plea from my cousin Sarah, claiming her daughter was in a critical accident, and I, like a fool, watched as the last 6 years of my hard-earned savings vanished from my bank account, a consequence of my own misguided trust. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel, tell us where you're from, and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. The year was 2021, and I was living in a modest apartment in Brooklyn, New York, a stone's throw from Prospect Park. I worked as a graphic designer, meticulously saving every extra dollar, dreaming of opening my own small studio. My life was, by all accounts, unremarkable but stable, built on a foundation of hard work and careful planning. Sarah, my cousin, lived a starkly different life in a sprawling house in Greenwich, Connecticut, a life of apparent luxury funded by her husband's high-flying finance career. Or so I thought. We were never particularly close growing up. She was the glamorous, popular one, always at the center of attention, while I preferred the quiet corners, lost in my sketchbooks. Our interactions became even more infrequent as adults, limited to obligatory holiday greetings and the occasional Facebook like. So when her name flashed across my phone screen that Tuesday evening, my first thought was a flicker of surprise, followed by a vague sense of unease. Her voice, when I answered, was a frantic, almost unrecognizable wail. "Amelia? Oh God, Amelia, it's terrible. It's Lily." Lily was Sarah's 8-year-old daughter, a sweet, bright-eyed girl I'd only met a handful of times. My heart immediately lurched. "What happened? Is she okay?" I asked, my own voice trembling with a sudden, inexplicable dread. Sarah's words tumbled out, a torrent of raw panic and despair. Lily had been hit by a car, a reckless driver speeding through a crosswalk. She was in critical condition, rushed to the emergency room at Greenwich Hospital, requiring immediate, specialized surgery that wasn't covered by their insurance, or at least not entirely. She spoke of astronomical figures, of a rare blood type needed for a transfusion, of a desperate, fleeting window to save her daughter's life. "They need $40,000, Amelia. 40,000 cash by tomorrow morning. Our accounts are frozen with the divorce, David's being impossible, and I have nothing. Please, Amelia, you're my only hope. Lily, she might not make it." Her voice broke into gut-wrenching sobs, punctuated by what sounded like muffled hospital noises in the background. My mind reeled. $40,000. It was nearly every penny I had in my savings, the fruit of 6 years of disciplined budgeting, skipped vacations, and countless late nights at my drawing tablet. My dream of the studio, of financial independence, flashed before my eyes, a fragile thing in the face of a child's life. But how could I say no? How could I even hesitate when a little girl's survival hung in the balance? Sarah was family, and Lily was an innocent child. The logical part of my brain, the part that had always been meticulously careful with money, screamed warnings. Frozen accounts? 40,000 in cash by morning? It sounded off. But the emotional tide, the primal urge to help a suffering child, drowned out the rational whispers. I pictured Lily's sweet face, her bright smile, and the image solidified my decision. "Okay, Sarah," I said, my voice barely a whisper, the words feeling heavy on my tongue. "Okay. How do I get it to you?" Sarah's relief was palpable, almost dizzying in its intensity. She instructed me to transfer the money to a specific account number, one that she claimed was a special hospital fund for urgent, uninsured cases. She swore on everything holy that she would pay me back within the month, as soon as her divorce settlement came through, as soon as David released funds. She thanked me profusely, her gratitude a thick, sticky syrup of emotion that felt both genuine and a little too much. After the call, I sat there, staring at my phone, the silence of my apartment suddenly deafening. My hands trembled as I navigated my online banking portal. The amount, $40,000, glared back at me from the transfer screen. It felt like I was severing a limb, watching a part of myself bleed away. With a deep, shaky breath, I hit confirm. The money was gone. For the next few days, I lived in a haze of anxiety, calling Sarah repeatedly for updates on Lily. Her responses were always brief, curt, and slightly evasive. Lily was recovering, slowly but still critical. The surgery had been a success, thank God. She was in a medically induced coma. Visitors weren't allowed. The hospital was strict. Each excuse, each vague explanation, chipped away at the initial surge of relief and replaced it with a growing knot of unease. Then, about a week later, something concrete happened, something that started the slow, agonizing process of awakening. I was scrolling through my Instagram feed, mindlessly passing the time, when I saw a post from another distant cousin, Jessica. It was a picture of her, smiling broadly, standing next to Sarah, both of them holding champagne flutes. The caption read, "So happy for Sarah and David finally patching things up. Amazing anniversary celebration at the St. Regis. #LoveWins #GreenwichGlam." My blood ran cold. The St. Regis. Greenwich. Champagne flutes. Sarah and David patching things up. Divorce? Frozen accounts? Lily in critical condition? It was like a bucket of ice water had been thrown over me. The dates, the timings, everything screamed incongruity. Jessica's post was from 3 days prior, right around the time Sarah was still giving me vague updates about Lily's slow recovery and medically induced coma. My heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I immediately messaged Jessica, feigning casual interest. "Hey, so glad to see Sarah and David are doing well. How's Lily? Haven't heard much from Sarah lately." Jessica's reply came quickly, full of bright, oblivious cheer. "Oh, Lily's perfectly fine. She was at the party with them, running around like a little maniac, as usual." Why, did Sarah say something? The world tilted on its axis. Lily was fine. She had been at a party. My $40,000. It wasn't for a life-saving surgery. It was for a party. Or worse. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow, a sickening wave of nausea washing over me. Sarah had lied. She had fabricated an entire, elaborate, gut-wrenching emergency, using her own child as bait to swindle me out of my savings. The audacity, the cruelty, the sheer, cold-blooded manipulation of it all. My vision blurred with unshed tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of white-hot rage, of humiliation, of a burning desire for justice. I felt like a naive fool, utterly played, my kindness and empathy twisted into a weapon against me. The anger, however, was quickly followed by a chilling clarity. I wasn't going to just let this go. Sarah, my cousin, had mistaken my soft nature for weakness. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. The discovery sent me into a tailspin. My apartment, usually a sanctuary, felt like a cage. Every corner seemed to echo with Sarah's fake sobs, her manipulative pleas. I replayed our phone conversation over and over, dissecting every word, every inflection. The way she'd emphasized 40,000 cash, the vague explanation about frozen accounts and David being impossible. It all clicked into place, pieces of a cruel puzzle falling into their sickening order. The rage was a constant hum beneath my skin, but it was a cold rage, not a fiery one. It was the kind of anger that fueled a quiet, methodical resolve. I knew with absolute certainty that I couldn't confront Sarah directly. She was too good at lying, too adept at twisting narratives. She would deny everything, gaslight me, and probably make me feel like I was the one in the wrong for even questioning her. No, direct confrontation wasn't the answer. My revenge needed to be precise, devastating, and entirely unexpected. I needed to let her believe she had won, that she had gotten away with it, until the very last moment. That thought, the idea of watching her smug complacency shatter, was the only thing that kept me from crumbling. My first step was research. I had to understand the landscape, the legal and financial mechanisms at play. I spent hours online, poring over articles about wire fraud, financial scams, and civil litigation. I discovered that a wire transfer, once completed, was notoriously difficult to reverse, especially if it was willingly initiated by the sender. However, there were avenues if the transfer was made under false pretenses, a fraudulent inducement. It wouldn't be easy, and it certainly wouldn't be quick. I looked up Greenwich Hospital's policies on emergency payments and uninsured patients. Not a single mention of a special hospital fund, requiring cash transfers to personal accounts. Another lie exposed, another layer of her deception peeled back. The audacity of using a child's fabricated illness, a hospital's good name, to commit fraud was truly sickening. I considered going to the police, but the thought of navigating the complexities of a criminal investigation, the time it would take, the uncertainty of a conviction, didn't feel satisfying enough. I wanted something more immediate, more personal, something that would hit Sarah where it hurt most. Her illusion of untouchability, her carefully constructed world of financial stability. I needed to build an ironclad case, a narrative so compelling that no one, especially not a bank or a court, could deny what she had done. I started by meticulously documenting everything. The date and time of the phone call. My phone records showing Sarah's incoming call. The exact amount of the transfer, with screenshots from my online banking portal. The account number I'd transferred the money to. I also saved Jessica's Instagram post, archiving the image and caption, even going so far as to take screenshots of the comments section. It was a digital breadcrumb trail, leading directly to Sarah's deception. I even found a publicly available article in a local Greenwich online newspaper detailing David and Sarah's lavish anniversary party at the St. Regis, complete with photos. And there, in one of the photos, was Lily laughing, playing a game with other children. No sign of a critical accident, no hint of a medically induced coma. Just a happy, healthy child. Each piece of evidence fueled my resolve. Sarah believed she was so clever, so beyond reproach. She lived in her gilded cage in Greenwich, surrounded by people who likely admired her perceived success. She probably thought I was just some naive cousin from Brooklyn, easily duped, too intimidated to fight back. This assumption, this smug superiority, was her greatest vulnerability. The next few weeks were a blur of work and quiet investigation. I deliberately didn't contact Sarah. I wanted her to think I was just another mark, easily forgotten, quietly nursing my wounds. I even sent her a casual text message a few weeks after the incident, feigning concern. "Hey Sarah, just checking in. How's Lily doing now? Hope everything's back to normal." Her reply was short and dismissive. "All good, thanks. Busy with life, you know how it is." No mention of the money, no apology, no promise to repay. Just a casual wave of dismissal, a clear sign that she considered the matter closed, her deception a resounding success. This casual indifference hardened my heart further. It wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about the principle, the blatant disregard for my trust and my well-being. It was about the way she had preyed on my empathy, my genuine concern for a child. This was a personal affront, and the personal sting demanded a personal retribution. My plan began to crystallize. I wouldn't go to the police, not yet. I would start with the financial institutions. Banks, I learned, had strict protocols for fraud. While they might not reverse a wire transfer simply because of a change of heart, they certainly took an interest in accounts linked to fraudulent activities, especially if the fraud involved misrepresentation and significant sums. The key was to prove intent to defraud. And I had the proof. I remembered the account number Sarah had given me. It wasn't her personal checking account. It was a different one, a joint account with David, her supposedly impossible husband. This detail was crucial. If their accounts were truly frozen, due to divorce proceedings as she claimed, then how could this joint account receive a transfer? And if they had patched things up and celebrated their anniversary, as Jessica's post suggested, then the entire premise of her emergency was a fabrication. I needed to involve David. Not directly, not yet. But his name on that account was a lifeline, a potential crack in Sarah's armor. She had been so careful to paint him as the villain in her divorce narrative, the one making her life difficult. But if he was unknowingly complicit in her fraud, or at least his account was, then the bank would have a much stronger case for investigation. The more I dug, the more I realized the depth of her lies, and the more her world, built on facades and deceit, began to show its cracks. My vulnerability slowly morphed into a quiet strength, a calculated determination. Sarah thought she had won. She thought she was untouchable. But the game had only just begun, and I was about to show her that some victories come with a very steep price. The weight of the betrayal settled deep within me, transforming the initial shock into a cold, focused resolve. Sarah, with her perfectly coiffed hair and designer clothes, had always exuded an air of effortless superiority. Now I saw it for what it was, a shield of arrogance, a delusion of invincibility. She operated from a place of privilege, seemingly unburdened by the consequences that mere mortals faced. She had always gotten what she wanted, bending situations and people to her will with a saccharine smile and a well-placed lie. This wasn't just about my money, it was about challenging her belief that she could manipulate anyone, especially family, with impunity. My research led me down a rabbit hole of banking regulations and anti-fraud protocols. I learned about the Suspicious Activity Report, SAR, that banks are mandated to file for certain transactions, especially those involving potential fraud. I also discovered that while a wire transfer is difficult to reverse, a bank could, under specific circumstances, freeze an account if there was compelling evidence of fraudulent activity. This became my target. I wouldn't just ask for my money back. I would present a case so airtight that the bank would have no choice but to act, not just for my sake, but for their own regulatory compliance. My first formal step was to compile a detailed timeline and narrative of events. I wrote out a chronological account, starting from Sarah's initial call, meticulously noting dates, times, and key statements. I included screenshots of our text messages, Jessica's Instagram post, and the local newspaper article with Lily's photo. I even dug up an old email from Sarah from years ago, where she'd casually mentioned the bank where she held her accounts, a large, well-known institution with branches both in Connecticut and New York. This was critical. I wouldn't just be filing a complaint, I would be providing a prosecutor's brief. I walked into the local branch of my bank in Brooklyn, an unassuming building I'd passed countless times without much thought. I asked to speak with a fraud investigator, and after a brief wait, I was directed to a stern-faced woman named Ms. Chun. Her office was Spartan, her demeanor no nonsense. I laid out my case calmly and clearly, presenting my meticulously organized folder of evidence. I watched her face as I spoke, seeing her initial skepticism slowly give way to a focused intensity. When I showed her the screenshot of Jessica's Instagram post, then the newspaper article with Lily healthy and smiling, a flicker of something, disbelief, perhaps even a hint of indignation, crossed her features. "So, to be clear, Ms. Davies," she said, her voice low and measured, "your cousin fabricated a medical emergency involving her child to induce you to transfer $40,000 to an account you believed was for hospital expenses, but was in fact a personal joint account belonging to her and her husband, who she claimed was in the midst of a divorce and freezing assets." "Precisely," I confirmed, my voice steady. "And the child was, in fact, perfectly healthy and attending an anniversary party during the period she claimed the child was in critical condition." Ms. Chun leaned back in her chair, her gaze fixed on the documents. "This is serious, Ms. Davies. Wire fraud, false pretenses, it's a criminal matter." "I understand," I replied. "But my immediate concern is recovering my stolen savings and ensuring she can't do this to anyone else. I believe your institution, given the evidence, has a responsibility to investigate the account that received the fraudulent transfer." I explained that the receiving account was with her bank, the very same institution. This detail seemed to galvanize her. Fraud within their own system was a different beast. She assured me they would launch an internal investigation, that a SAR would be filed, and that I would be contacted. The process, she warned, could be lengthy and complex. I left the bank feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. It was the first concrete step, the first blow struck. But I knew this was just the beginning of a long, drawn-out war. I had unleashed a force I couldn't control, and now I had to wait. Waiting was the hardest part. The days stretched into weeks, each one a torment of anticipation. I continued my work, but my mind was perpetually replaying conversations, strategizing, preparing for whatever might come next. I felt a constant tremor of anxiety, mingled with a burning sense of purpose. I imagined Sarah, oblivious, probably enjoying her ill-gotten gains, reinforcing her belief in her own cleverness. That image was a powerful motivator. About a month later, I received a call from Ms. Chun. Her voice was still formal, but there was a subtle shift in her tone, a hint of something more definitive. Ms. Davies, our fraud department has completed its initial review. We have corroborated much of your evidence, and it appears there is indeed a strong indication of fraudulent activity associated with the account in question. We have filed the necessary reports with federal authorities. My breath hitched. What does that mean for the account? For now, she said, due to the nature of the allegations and the filing of the SAR, the account has been flagged. Further action will depend on the ongoing investigation by our internal legal team and, potentially, law enforcement. I cannot disclose specific details, but rest assured, we are taking this very seriously. It wasn't a full victory, not yet, but it was a crucial turning point. Flagged meant scrutiny. It meant eyes were on Sarah's finances, eyes she didn't know existed. It meant her world, previously so secure, was about to be shaken. I knew flagged could quickly escalate to frozen. The wheels of justice, or at least financial justice, were turning. I didn't contact Sarah. I didn't gloat. I simply continued my life, outwardly calm, inwardly a coiled spring. I imagined her going about her daily routines, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing on her financial horizon. This silence, I realized, was another weapon. It allowed her to remain complacent, to continue believing she was untouchable. The longer she believed she had gotten away with it, the greater the shock would be when her carefully constructed reality came crashing down. I could almost taste it, the moment of reckoning, the delicious unraveling of her smug facade. The game was still in play, but now I held a powerful hidden card. The silence that followed Ms. Chen's call was deafening, a taut string vibrating with anticipation. I imagined Sarah, completely unaware, continuing her life of manicured lawns and high-end shopping in Greenwich. This manufactured ignorance was part of my strategy. I wanted the blow to be utterly blindsiding. Every day that passed, I reminded myself that the financial institutions, while slow, were methodical. They were not easily swayed by emotion or personal narratives. They operated on evidence and compliance. And I had given them an abundance of both. The waiting was agony, a test of my patience. There were moments of doubt, flashes of fear that I had gone too far, that Sarah would somehow twist the situation, that I would be the one to suffer consequences. But then I would recall the cold dread of realizing my savings were gone, the image of Lily at the party, perfectly healthy, and the anger would resurface, stealing my resolve. Sarah was a master of appearances. Her social media was a curated gallery of perfection. Lavish vacations, designer outfits, gourmet meals, and always a picture-perfect family. She cultivated an image of success and happiness, making it impossible for anyone to suspect the depths of her deception. This facade, I realized, was both her strength and her ultimate weakness. She relied so heavily on what others perceived that any disruption to that image would be catastrophic for her. I knew the moment of truth would come, not from a direct confrontation, but from a bureaucratic hammer falling in her world of privilege. And then, about 2 months after my initial meeting with Ms. Chun, it happened. Not a call from the bank, but an unexpected, frantic message from another cousin, Emily. Emily was Sarah's closest confidant, always privy to the latest family dramas. Her message was terse. "Have you heard from Sarah? She's losing it." My heart pounded. This was it. I replied, feigning innocence. "No, what's going on?" Emily's response came in a flurry of texts, laced with frantic emojis and capital letters. Her bank accounts. They're all frozen. Every single one. She can't access any money. Says they're accusing her of fraud, something about a wire transfer. David is furious. He's saying he had no idea what she was doing. It's a total disaster. She's saying someone maliciously reported her. She thinks it's her ex-friend, Tiffany, trying to get back at her for some old feud. A triumphant, cold satisfaction washed over me. Tiffany. Of course. Sarah, in her self-serving arrogance, couldn't conceive that someone she had wronged could orchestrate such a precise retaliation. She would immediately deflect blame, spinning a narrative of victimhood. This was perfect. She was looking in the wrong direction, giving me even more time to remain an unseen hand in her downfall. I kept my replies to Emily vague and sympathetic. "Oh my God, that's awful. I hope she sorts it out." I offered no advice, no insights, just enough platitudes to maintain my innocent bystander persona. I needed to know more, but without revealing my hand. The next day, I received another call from Ms. Chun. Her voice was calm, professional. "Ms. Davies, I wanted to inform you that, following a comprehensive investigation and consultation with our legal department, we have placed a full hold on the accounts associated with the individual in question, pending further review by federal authorities. We have also initiated the process to facilitate the return of your funds." A full hold. The words were music to my ears. My funds were coming back. More importantly, Sarah's world was effectively grinding to a halt. "Thank you, Ms. Chun," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much." "We take these matters very seriously, Ms. Davies," she replied. "And your thorough documentation was instrumental in our investigation. It wasn't just my money, it was the validation, the acknowledgement that I wasn't crazy, that her deception was real and had consequences. The hold meant she couldn't pay her bills, couldn't access credit cards, couldn't maintain her lavish lifestyle. Her carefully constructed facade was crumbling, not with a bang, but with the quiet, suffocating squeeze of financial immobility. The real war, the escalation, began now. Sarah, trapped in her financial prison, started to lash out. Her carefully maintained composure evaporated under the pressure. She called me, something she hadn't done in months, her voice shrill and laced with panic, utterly devoid of the sweet, manipulative tone she'd used to steal my money. "Amelia, have you heard anything about this banking nonsense? My accounts are frozen. It's insane. I can't even buy groceries for Lily." Her voice was a desperate, grasping claw. "Frozen?" I asked, feigning surprise. "Why would they do that?" "They're saying it's fraud. Can you believe it? Some malicious person, reported me for some old wire transfer. It's ridiculous. You know how I am with money. I'd never do anything like that." The brazen lie, the gaslighting, even now when she was cornered. It infuriated me, but also strengthened my resolve. "I have no idea, Sarah," I said, keeping my voice even. "I'm so sorry to hear that. That sounds incredibly stressful." I offered no help, no solutions, just a bland, detached sympathy. Her desperate pleas continued for several minutes, a litany of financial woes and accusations against imaginary enemies. She mentioned David was threatening to leave her, saying this exposed her reckless financial habits. The unraveling was happening, just as I had envisioned. I felt a surge of cold satisfaction. She was experiencing a fraction of the panic and helplessness she had inflicted upon me. But this was only the beginning. Freezing her accounts was a powerful move, but I wanted more than just financial inconvenience. I wanted her carefully curated social world to crumble. The whispers, the gossip, the quiet judgment from her Greenwich elite circle. That was the true currency of her existence. And I was about to devalue it completely. The days following Sarah's frantic call were a strange mix of vindication and continued anxiety. While the satisfaction of knowing her accounts were frozen was immense, a part of me still worried. What if she found a loophole? What if she discovered it was me? I remained a ghost in the machine, offering Emily bland sympathies while absorbing every detail of Sarah's spiraling panic. Emily's updates became increasingly dramatic. Sarah was apparently blaming everyone. Tiffany, her former assistant, even David's estranged sister. The sheer delusion was breathtaking. She was so convinced of her own innocence, or rather, her own cleverness in manipulating others, that the idea of my retaliation was simply beyond her scope of comprehension. This blind spot, her supreme arrogance, was her undoing. The bank, true to Ms. Chen's word, initiated the process of returning my funds. It wasn't an immediate transfer. There was paperwork, verification, and a waiting period. But the assurance was there, a tangible promise that my dream studio was not permanently lost. This gave me the peace of mind to focus on the next phase of my plan: the public unraveling of Sarah's reputation. Greenwich, Connecticut, for all its wealth and grandeur, was a small town in many ways. Gossip traveled fast, especially among the affluent circles Sarah so desperately sought to impress. Her life was built on appearances, on projecting an image of effortless success and impeccable social standing. To disrupt that image, to expose her as a fraud, would be a far greater punishment than mere financial inconvenience. I knew I couldn't be the one to directly spread the rumors. That would expose my hand and make me seem vindictive. My approach had to be subtle, an indirect whisper that would grow into a roar. I needed a catalyst, a seemingly innocuous way to plant the seeds of doubt. My target became the local women's charity gala, an annual event that Sarah always made a grand spectacle of attending. It was her stage, her opportunity to parade her latest designer gown and hobnob with the town's elite. The gala was less than a month away. I started by contacting Jessica again, the same cousin who had unknowingly provided me with the first crucial piece of evidence. This time, I framed my questions differently. "Hey Jessica," I texted. "I'm still so sorry about Sarah's bank issues. It sounds like such a nightmare. Is she still planning on going to the Greenwich Charity Gala next month? I know how much she loves that event." Jessica, ever the eager informant, responded almost immediately. "Oh, she's absolutely freaking out about it. She was supposed to be on the planning committee this year, but with her accounts frozen, she can't even afford a new dress, let alone donate to the charity. She's humiliated. David apparently told her she needs to lay low for a while. It's a complete mess." This was my opening. "Wow, that's really tough," I replied, feigning sympathy. "I mean, I know how much she contributes to these things. Remember that year she donated that huge sum for the children's wing? Such a generous person." I was deliberately planting an idea, an incongruity. Sarah, who was now so financially strapped she couldn't buy a new dress, had once made a huge sum donation. This was a detail I knew Jessica would instinctively process as odd, given Sarah's current predicament. I continued, "It's just so strange, isn't it? She was always so financially sound. It makes you wonder if her accounts are frozen now. How did she manage that big donation before? You know, the one for Lily's emergency. I mean, when Lily was apparently so sick." I added the last part almost as an afterthought, a casual slip of the tongue. I waited, and Jessica, bless her oblivious heart, took the bait. "Lily's emergency? What are you talking about, Amelia? Lily's never been seriously sick. And what donation are you talking about?" My feigned surprise was genuine sounding. "Oh my God, I must have completely misunderstood. Sarah called me months ago, frantic, saying Lily had been in a terrible accident and needed emergency surgery, and she needed a large sum of cash for a special hospital fund, like $40,000, that wasn't covered by insurance. I thought that was the donation she was talking about. She said her divorce had frozen her accounts, and she was desperate." Jessica's response was a flurry of question marks, followed by a stunned silence. "Then, Amelia, she told me about the frozen accounts, but she never said anything about Lily being sick. And $40,000? Where did she get that kind of money if her accounts were frozen? And she was at the St. Regis party with David, perfectly fine." The fuse was lit. Jessica, with her extensive social network and love for gossip, was the perfect conduit. I knew she wouldn't keep this information to herself. The shock and disbelief in her messages confirmed that the seed of doubt had taken root. I could almost hear the mental gears turning, the pieces of Sarah's carefully constructed narrative beginning to splinter in Jessica's mind. "Honestly, Jessica, I don't know what to think," I replied, maintaining my facade of confusion and concern. It was all so alarming at the time. I just wanted to help. I guess I got caught up in the panic. I made myself sound like a victim of a confusing situation, not the orchestrator of her downfall. Over the next few days, the whispers began. Not directly to me, of course, but through the subtle shifts in online interactions, the sudden absence of Sarah's usual social media cheerleaders. Emily even called me, her voice now tinged with a different kind of anxiety. Amelia, Jessica is going around telling everyone that Sarah faked Lily's illness to get money from you, and that the bank froze her accounts because of it. It's all over the place. Sarah is absolutely livid. She's denying everything, but no one knows what to believe anymore. My heart swelled with a chilling satisfaction. This was it. The public humiliation, the erosion of her carefully guarded reputation. The power she derived from her perceived social standing was being systematically dismantled. Sarah, the untouchable Queen of Greenwich, was now being exposed as a fraudster, a manipulator who would even use her own child as a prop in her schemes. The calls and texts from Emily became more frequent, detailing Sarah's increasingly erratic behavior. Screaming at David, canceling social engagements, desperately trying to control a narrative that was spiraling out of her grasp. Her world, once so meticulously ordered, was now a maelstrom of suspicion and judgment. The next Greenwich Charity Gala would not be her stage. It would be her public execution. And I, the quiet, unassuming cousin from Brooklyn, would be watching from the shadows, her silent executioner. The public unraveling of Sarah's reputation was a slow, agonizing bleed for her, but a deeply satisfying spectacle for me. The whispers Jessica had initiated spread like wildfire through the tight-knit social circles of Greenwich. Suddenly, every opulent purchase Sarah had ever flaunted, every extravagant party she'd hosted, was viewed through the lens of suspicion. Was it truly earned, or was it funded by some other unsuspecting victim? The questions, once unspoken, now hung heavy in the air whenever her name was mentioned. The irony was palpable. Sarah had meticulously cultivated an image of success, glamour, and generosity. Now that very image was her undoing. The same people who had admired her perceived wealth were now quietly dissecting her character, judging her with the same casual cruelty she had inflicted upon others. I kept my distance, remaining a phantom presence in her downfall. My phone calls and texts with Emily continued, with me always playing the role of the sympathetic, slightly naive cousin, offering platitudes and feigned concern. "It's just so hard to believe, Emily," I'd say, my voice carefully modulated to convey a mixture of shock and sadness. Sarah always seemed so put together. You just never know what people are going through. Emily, caught in the crossfire of Sarah's increasing paranoia and the relentless gossip, became my unwilling informant, a detailed reporter of Sarah's spiraling descent. The charity gala came and went. Sarah was conspicuously absent. Emily informed me that Sarah had tried to attend, convinced that her mere presence would quash the rumors, but had been met with cold shoulders and averted gazes. Her usual circle of friends, sensing the toxicity, had subtly distanced themselves. The social isolation, for someone who thrived on external validation, was a profound punishment. "She was absolutely mortified, Amelia," Emily reported, her voice hushed. "She came home after only an hour, hysterical. David apparently told her she was a liability, and he was tired of her dramas." The cracks in Sarah's marriage, once hidden beneath a veneer of affluence, were now gaping chasms. But the ultimate payoff, the sweet, tangible victory, came a few weeks later. Miss Chen called again. "Ms. Davies, I'm pleased to inform you that the full amount of $40,000 has been successfully returned to your account." I felt a profound lightness, a release of tension I hadn't realized I was carrying. My savings, my future, were back. "Thank you, Miss Chen," I repeated, genuinely grateful for her professionalism and the bank's thoroughness. "And what about Sarah? What happens now?" "Her accounts remain frozen, Ms. Davies," Miss Chen replied. "The federal authorities have initiated their own investigation. We have provided them with all our findings. Beyond that, I cannot provide any further details. Her accounts remained frozen. The federal authorities were involved." This was more than I had dared to hope for. Sarah wasn't just facing social ostracism. She was facing a potential legal nightmare. The consequences of her actions were escalating far beyond a simple civil claim for restitution. This wasn't just about recovering my money. It was about ensuring that she faced a reckoning, that her sense of impunity was shattered. The final nail in her social coffin, however, came from an unexpected source, David. As the federal investigation loomed, and the truth about Sarah's reckless financial behavior became undeniable, David made a calculated move to protect himself. He filed for divorce, not just any divorce, but a very public, very acrimonious one, citing financial misconduct and marital fraud in the initial filings. The news, when it hit the local papers and online forums, was devastating for Sarah. The same newspapers that had once celebrated her lavish anniversary party now plastered headlines hinting at her criminal activity. David, in his own self-preservation, had become another unwitting instrument of her downfall. The man she had claimed was impossible during her fabricated emergency was now actively exposing her. The humiliation was complete. I saw a picture of Sarah online, a grainy candid shot taken by a paparazzo outside the courthouse. She looked gaunt, her usually immaculate hair disheveled, her eyes hollow. The designer clothes seemed to hang on her, no longer an adornment, but a cruel mockery of her former grandeur. The smugness was gone, replaced by a desperate, trapped expression. It was the face of someone utterly defeated, stripped bare of her illusions of power and untouchability. I felt no joy in her suffering, not truly. What I felt was a profound sense of justice, a quiet satisfaction that the world, for once, had balanced its scales. My revenge was complete. I had allowed her to think she had won, to bask in her perceived victory, only to watch her world slowly, meticulously, irrevocably crumble around her. The silence from her, the complete absence of contact, was the loudest testament to her defeat. She knew deep down what had happened. She knew who had pulled the strings. But she couldn't say it, couldn't accuse me, because to do so would be to admit her own heinous deception, a truth too bitter for her arrogant palate. My life slowly returned to normal. My $40,000 was back in my account, and I started planning my graphic design studio again, but this time with a renewed sense of caution and a hardened heart. The experience had scarred me, leaving a permanent mark on my trust in others, especially those closest to me. Yet it had also forged a strength I never knew I possessed, a fierce resolve to protect myself and my integrity. The news of Sarah continued to trickle in through Emily, always unsolicited, always dramatic. David had gone through with the divorce, stripping her of most of their joint assets, citing her fraudulent activities as grounds for a more favorable settlement for him. The federal investigation, I heard, had stalled somewhat, bogged down by the complexities of financial crimes, but the stain on her record remained indelible. She had been publicly shamed, socially ostracized, and financially ruined. She had lost everything she valued: her reputation, her marriage, and her carefully constructed life of privilege. I had wanted her to lose her smugness, her sense of invincibility. And she had. The last I heard, Sarah had moved out of Greenwich, retreating to a smaller, nondescript town, far from the critical eyes of her former social circles. She was working a low-paying job, a stark contrast to her previous life of leisure, constantly looking over her shoulder, paranoid that her past would catch up to her again. The tables had truly turned. The vulnerable, easily duped cousin had become the architect of her downfall, a silent, unseen force that had brought her world crashing down. The sweet, innocent child she had used as a prop in her cruel charade was now the one witness to her mother's spectacular fall from grace. The end.